All right. We're here doing the thing. Call to order.
Welcome, board member. From what's that? Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Liz turned it on. Good afternoon, school board members, and welcome to our September board workshop. Board member Norton is on excused absence since she is ill this Monday, and we just discussed that school is in session and the illnesses are flourishing. So we will make sure that we take care of ourselves accordingly. We are going to spend some time today focusing on two specific areas. We are going to revisit our conversation from our August board workshop and start talking about some of the backward planning that is necessary for our bond work, and maybe triangulate in on a date for us to go out for that bond. So Liz, if you want to pull up our slide presentation, we would be ready to kind of move through that. And then after the bond conversation, we'll move into our equity audit conversation and have some discussion around that topic. Okay. I moved the slides around just a little bit. I wanted to start off with this slide just because there's a lot on it, and it helps us understand that even though we've gone through the long-range facilities planning process, the 15-month process that we talked about at our August workshop, and then also at a school board meeting in June 24th to be exact. But these are some of the things that we know that we have to prepare for the next bond election. So and these are in no particular order, and this is not a completely exhaustive list, although it was the best thinking that Diana Hagland and David Bodine and Phil Crocker and myself could come up with on some of the things that we need to do. But determining the election date, which is, we have that we have that slated here on the next slide, so we can go back through that again. But also, we know that we're going to have a financial conversation with Trevor Carlson from Piper Sandler. We also I have asked that Jim Kuntz would share with us his perspective on some of the opportunities that are happening in Chelan County and specifically in the Wenatchee School District with regard to assessed values. So that will happen in this time frame as well. We also know that we need to research the other potential election measures that might be out there and when those might land so that we can be strategic about our ask for our community as well. We know that bond graphics will be part of this process. We know that communications and strategic planning will be a large part of this process. We also know that as a school board, we'll be passing a bond resolution prior to going out for the election. We know that there'll be some further development of the high school space and what that planning looks like. We also know there'll be some additional cost development and validation that will be outlined in deeper detail to come. Some master schedule developing as far as what is the timeline when we do pass a bond? What does the timeline look like for the building structure and the construction pieces there? Knowing that we also have our SCAP funding confirmation, so that School Construction Assistance Program, how much dollars are we specifically getting? We know that it's close to $79 million, but we also know that that can increase over time and will land on a specific point in time. We also know that we're going to need some community outreach and some additional engagement, and that can come in a variety of ways. And one of those is our Yes for Wenatchee Schools advocacy group. We already mentioned it that we're going to pass a school board bond resolution, but we also need to develop that resolution as well. We also need to make sure that we have a bond fact sheet and that we get some community feedback as well. So we're looking at how can we embrace some of the community feedback that we got last fall that informed where we went with our levy information and our levy protocol. We know we're going to need to do the same thing with our community, getting some feedback there. So that's a lot of stuff. And it's a lot of things that we need to prepare for. And it really is that runway that gets us to the point of the bond election itself. So, any thoughts or feedback on this not exhaustive list?
Um, I know that one of the things Jim Kuntz would say is, here's what Microsoft's plan is. Do we have anything that we could provide from Microsoft that would support that? Like, here's our timeline for the data center, or
Gotcha.
here's how we're seeing the tax impact. Not to say that like we don't trust Jim, but like
Yeah,
it'd be nice to have some outside verification for everything he's saying. I think that
absolutely.
will have a substantial impact on what 30 years looks like.
Absolutely, Tucker. And I don't know that, well, we don't have that at our fingertips, but I think that that would be a great partnership that we would like to encourage. And how can Microsoft be a part of our planning toward the bond in some way, shape, or form, and also looking at what are some of the other data centers that are going out there, working with Sabi and working with Helion, perhaps, and seeing what all they can offer. Us as maybe guidance and support, and then, as you mentioned, validation as well.
As well as, some kind of partnership
Yeah,
in, if we're building a new high school, like I think if you're in the tech industry, you'd want to be a part of that, hopefully.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially if you have a high school that has a data center technician pathway,
Yeah.
that would be a great place to partner. And I
Yeah.
know they're all interested in that right now. We're working closely with Sabi on building those internships for our students so that they can be part of that process. Yeah. Excellent. Great question. Other thoughts or comments? All right. Let's take a look at these dates once again. I think we had just enough time to preview them at our August board workshop. And so just taking a look at them again, we did omit April and August elections from this list based on the information that we've received in the past from Piper Sandler, is that those are not the greatest times to go out for an election for a bond or a levy based on their statistics. It's just, it is a great time. April is a great time to go out a second time if you need to. And August is just a time when our school community is not as engaged, and a time when a school is not out is not the best time for schools to go out. So we left those 2 dates off. But the three that we have here are, we have special election dates. We have February 10th of 2026. Which would put us on a pathway to have a resolution built and passed by December 12th of this year. And then we have November 3rd of 2026, which could potentially be the same time that Eastmont High School goes out for a bond as well. They're engaging their community right now and working through some of those long-range facilities conversations. And that would have us at August 4th. We would need to have a resolution filing date next year. And then, of course, February 9th of 2027, and that would put us at December 11th, 2026. And so we know there are probably pros and cons to each of these dates and the consideration of that. And I thought it might be a good time for us to maybe think about and share our thoughts on what the pros and cons might be of each of these, because this might be our most imminent decision that we need to make in our planning of what that runway looks like for us to get out and do all of the things on this slide.
How much of that previous slide with the 15 big scary bullets,
Mm-hmm.
how much of that is the district responsible for? Right? Like, if is this going to be something that we can share the load on, or is this going to be
Mm-hmm.
something that, like, if I ask you to do this, you're to be like, okay, well, I'm just going to stop doing everything else so that I can get rid of all these bullet points.
Great question, Tucker. It's a heavy burden on it's a heavy lift on the district, a lot of the bullets themselves, but we do have some support. Like, some of these are engaging other people. When we think about asking Trevor to come from Piper Sandler, like, he's going to take on the load for that, and he'll be ready.
And I mean, I remember
you know.
he gave a pretty robust conversation or a presentation
Yeah.
to the facility committee. So it's, it's
did.
not like is starting from scratch.
Exactly. He's got places and a leg to stand on already. And same with the discussion from the port. A lot of these things are us asking our partners to help support us. I have not been or led the district through a bond election before, but I know that what I hear from folks and what I hear in professional learning opportunities is it's it's pretty massive as far as the time commitment for the district and for the superintendent and for our advocacy group. And so I'm looking at it from that perspective. It's like, yes, this is going to be a lot. There are going to be some things that we set aside to make sure that we can hit all of these pieces, and having a little bit of a runway is important. It and I just think of what we did for the levy, and then I want to think of times it by 2 or 3 when we do this work. So yeah, it'll be a heavy lift no matter when we do it, and so that's just good for us to know.
Corey, going back to the dates, I'd be
Yeah.
curious to know what the voter turnout is from a previous November. So if we went with, say, a February 10th date, what is the voter turnout from a November election to February? Does that make sense?
Yes,
So I would like to see numbers on non-presidential elections.
correct. Yeah, we can get that.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking at my trusty note takers. Yes,
And obviously the reason I ask that is because of we need that 40% threshold,
the validation.
to
Mhm.
validate yeah.
Yep.
So want to make sure we cover all our bases.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for that consideration. That's important.
One thing about the February dates is that then you're able to rerun in April versus having to run in November and then wait until February to do your, okay, this is what we've changed in order to make it more attractive or what have you. I may be misremembering these, but from the facility committee, my understanding was it's an 18-month planning phase. So getting your architect, getting the designs. And so you would be looking at, if we did it in February, going to your like August. So right when all your planning is done, you're starting into the winter. So you might not be necessarily breaking ground that year versus coming into your finishing in February and you're starting that process. You know, again, lining up contractors and such is a complicated deal, but just, you know, the way I remember that timing was, you know, how it affects the actual school completion date.
Absolutely.
Might not be that big a swing.
Right. Absolutely. And we can resurface some of that information as well too, because not everybody was fortunate enough to be on the long range facilities committee as well. Other things to consider too are costs of materials. We know that there's an increase in the cost of materials the longer that we wait, but we also know that there are some assessed value implications that can happen as well. So it's kind of like those are some other pros and cons for us to really think about too. Procurement of materials and supplies, but also thinking about what will go online in 2026. We know that, or we understand that maybe one of Microsoft's 3 data centers will go online in 2026, whether it has an assessed value that increases overall or not. That's some speculation.
Corey, can I borrow your mic?
You sure can. We're sharing.
Yeah, thanks. I have a question related to credibility of numbers, and I'm really looking at the February 2026 one here. I remember we'll call it adverse winds when the construction estimate was not presented strongly and well for a bond. And it was difficult to convince people that the planning was sound. Now, what I like about the present approach is that it is called a design build or variations on that, so that the management of the project and the design of the project is much more flexible than would have been the case with historical bonds. But we are at a situation now where we have a concept design. How do we feel, what do people feel about the credibility in the eyes and ears of the electorate when they're presented with something that is at a concept stage and is not much fleshed out. I very much like the fact that this time we're involving educational consultants who specifically are advising us to build something that fits education. I think that's an added dimension that we didn't have before that really needs to be emphasized. There's the aspect of the sooner you make a decision, the less inflation you have. But I guess my one question is, well, one statement. I think if we go for an accelerated program, we've got to put a lot of effort into making it credible.
Did we have any input from our consultants on if they felt running it with Eastmont's bond, or if that was going to help us or hurt us? Are we going to provide too much information to our small community and they feel like overwhelmed, or can we sell it by putting them together?
Yes, the input, and Diana can help me if I'm not remembering everything correctly, but the input was from David Bodine. He felt like it would be a benefit to be running them at the same time, and to collaboratively build the momentum across the river. And it's interesting. I think it's one of those things where when I step back, I can see the benefits, but then I also am thinking, well, gosh, what if, we're talking $290 million for ours. And where does Eastmont land if theirs is $148 million, and it, like, ours is double theirs? What's the added cost benefit analysis from the public perspective? So I, as a superintendent, I'm kind of weighing it, but then again, as I'm reflecting on this, is we have to go when it's best for our community. And one of the things that Tucker keeps reminding me is making sure that we are maximizing on the momentum of our community and our school district. So yeah, I think there are pros and cons. Mark, that was great. To win Eastmont runs. The other thing is, I don't know when they're making a decision either. And so if they're working through, I know that they are working with their educational consultants, and they have 5 meetings that they're going to do with their facilities committee. So if they're going to wait till the end of those 5 meetings to make a decision, then, November 3rd seems very reasonable, 2026, that might be where they land, but who knows? They might also run into some unforeseen conversations that lengthen that time out, like we did in our own process as well, or things that are events that are happening in the district and the community that extend that work too. So
I'll add for the rest of the board that wasn't there. We had a first meeting of the advocacy group, and we talked a lot about community partnerships. How do we lessen this bond by having other people partner with us to kind of create some of the, because that includes the way that they're planning on doing the build at the high school is taking out some of the facilities like the track and then having to rebuild those. So you're adding the new athletic facility cost to that bond. So how can we find partners or Microsoft to provide technology, and having more time to really either get those partners on board, or say we exhausted all these leads, and unfortunately they're not going to, people aren't willing to partner with us, but making sure that the community knows that we did our absolute best to make sure that number was as small as possible.
I guess when we look at those dates, what are some thoughts on what the 4 of you might like to see in order to make an informed decision? Maria, you gave me some feedback. I'll get some of the stats on when to go out and what that validation looks like for non-presidential election years. So that's good. What are some other things that the district can provide the board that will help us make a more informed decision?
I think Martin brought up a good point of, any information we can have on design, just to have some clarity around. I know that at the very start of the facility committee, one of the people's frustration from the last time we did this was not feeling like it was a good design, but saying we have no information on the design is way worse than I don't like it. So, how do we, or even is there a timeline for where we could have some more concrete ideas? Because it sounded like that was kind of the back of the envelope, throw something into CAD and see what we come up with. But I think spending a little bit of time and maybe resources to try and get a better sense of what that really looks like might be beneficial, or I would appreciate.
I think I'm going to continue what I said, and I'm thinking on my feet and going almost countercurrent in terms of dealing with uncertainty. To me, what's critical is that we both are behaving responsibly and credibly and are seen that way. And actually, there are two uncertainties. One is what's the tax going to be? And the other one is what are you going to get and what's it going to cost stage by stage? But actually, if you went countercurrent and if you did everything else really solidly and gain confidence in other areas, you could almost say, well, actually, we know that we have the engineering and design flexibility to handle differences against a fixed number. You're almost saying, trust us, which is a bad pair of words to use. But if you really do have engineering competence and confidence, you can pick on the tax burden as being the thing that you make firm, which it is. And then provided you have the flexibility to meet that and do it well, that can be a message that is somewhat different from historical ones. It might make a conventional engineer think a little bit, but it could be a good way to go if you build up a lot of partnerships and a lot of willingness to do this. It's an urgent job and do it really well. So I'm putting out a sales pitch where you could turn it on its head and say early might actually be a way of creating confidence.
Corey, if we go out in November 2026, I believe 2026 is when the fines start on the high school. Is that correct?
Yes.
Is putting something on the ballot considered working to address the problem, or is it you have to have something passed?
Tucker, that is a great question. And there's still some uncertainty in my response, but I do feel really good about some of the things that we have done with regard to the high school. One of those is the investment grade audit that is complete, that we did receive some grant funding to do. So that's a step in the right direction. The other thing that we're doing right now is our AEM students, as you heard, are working on the high school specifically to build a management and energy efficiency management plan and structure for that building. That is also a part of the Department of Commerce fine structure. So you have to have these pieces in place. If we can, and we've started reducing our energy efficiencies in July of 2025, which is great because you need to have a year of those.
Improving our efficiencies.
Correct. Yes. Improving.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. Improving our energy efficiencies. So I believe with that in conjunction with us planning to run a bond, I believe that we will not see Department of Commerce fine for $443,000 in 2026. And I would like to share more confidence, as Martin mentioned, with that as we go further along in the process and what we're actually able to see. But I think between those three things, we're going to come out on top of this, because I believe if the Department of Commerce does have the leniency that they're sharing on school districts that are making strategic and intentional efforts, that's going to be us. As I talk to other folks across the state that are kind of just now gearing up for some of this work, and we've been working on it for the past 2.5, 3 years. So that's great. Great comment. Lost my train of thought too at the same time. Any other thoughts on what you could see to help make this decision?
Seems like we already gave you a lot of homework.
You did. That's good. Mark, how about you?
When are you hoping to make a decision? Like, when are you thinking we're going to make this decision if we get more information? The next board meeting?
Well, I think as Another great question. As time goes by, we're slowly drawing a line through February 10th, 2026, just so you know. So the longer we take, the longer that one is just kind of disappears. So it would be great if we could, and maybe we can look toward how soon can I get you this information that'll help you make the most informed decision possible. And so if that's October 20 or October 14th, which is the next board meeting after our September 23rd, or if we're pushing all the way to October 28th, then yeah, that would be kind of contingent on how quick we can get you what you need.
Yeah, I think the advocacy group is meeting again this week.
Yeah.
So, I think if they can hit the ground running and provide some of the support, some of those things were like bond graphics and bond literature, if they can chip in and provide some of those services that might hurry the thing along. And I think, as I said, this is meeting number 2. So how fast can they spin that engine up? I think will help us know. And I think we'll know by the next meeting kind of how things are going.
Absolutely. Yeah, well said. The April one, we omitted just because it usually is not a time when a lot of bonds go out to election, and those that have not historically been, very, very well played out. And same
0 for 4 in April.
Yeah. Yep. And that's probably just because, well, it's for a variety of reasons, but I'm sure it's because it's just not one of those times that is as big in the ballot structure.
I think just looking at the data on voter turnout, it looks like 30 to 40% is normal for the February special elections. November normally has a higher turnout on general election years. On odd numbered years, it's about 36%. So it's a little bit higher, but you're in the same, I think, bucket there. And so it just really comes down to we'll get, I think, fewer faces in February, but we'll stand out amongst other issues. We're going to get more people in November automatically, but we're going to have to push hard to distinguish our bond from everything else.
Well said. Thanks for looking that up, Mark. Okay, well, the school district will work on finding the 3 things that I wrote down are some, and Mark kind of took care of some of it, but getting a more detailed data on numbers and election data, and we'll pull some of that from the information that Trevor Carlson has shared with us in the past, and then looking at maybe some more concrete details with construction and phasing, time and resources as well. And then, of course, if what we can understand on tax burdens as well. So figuring out those items, and we'll get back to the board. Once we have that information and then the feedback from the advocacy board, then we can make a decision on when we might want to approach this topic again. Okay, sounds great. Perfect. Okay. Let's jump into, I went backwards. Yep, there I am again. Okay, let's jump into the equity program review. And I'm going to move my notes up here a little bit as well. So we have 5 areas in the equity program review, and I was just going to read just the introduction as well to kind of set the context, the executive summary here. So the Wenatchee School District partnered with Education Northwest to conduct a district-wide equity program review. The objective was to collect information to inform implementation of the district's strategic plan. The Education Northwest team collaborated with district representatives, school board members, educators, students, families, and community members to explore the extent to which conditions, opportunities, and resources in 5 focus areas are accessible to all students. For each of the 5 focus areas, we developed research questions that were finalized with input from a working group comprised of students, educators, district leaders, and family and community members. We use the following methods to collect data for addressing each question. And so we have analysis of student level data on access to learning opportunities and discipline, interviews and focus groups with educators, administrators, families, students, and community members, surveys of students, educators, and families, review of curricular materials and adoption policy, summary of district policies regarding equity in instruction, personnel, and student services, and then an analysis of hiring data and policies related to staffing, analysis of administrative personnel data from statewide database. And then they go on to say, below we present the key findings for each research question and summarize considerations for equitable implementation of the district's strategic plan. And so anyway, I thought we would. There are two versions of this document, and the board has had access to both of them. One is the full 160-page document, and then the other one is kind of the 18-page key findings document. And the work that we're doing today is based on the key findings document. And randomly, I broke up each of the sections for each of our board members here. So Martin, you had focus area 1, access to learning opportunities. Julie had focus area 2, instructional practices and policies. Maria had focus area 3, curriculum. Tucker, you had focus area 4, discipline. And Mark, you had focus area 5, hiring and recruitment. And what I've asked the board to do is to read each of their sections and respond to a couple of prompts that we have here. So the area of focus. And so one of the great things about this process is our entire conversation can be based on what is written in these 18 pages, or since you all have different levels of robust understanding of the school district, then you can bring in those items as well too. So don't feel confined to just this document. You're able to bring in the other things that you know as well. Or it may be a situation where, Corey, you gave me something that I know nothing about, and I am going to, use everything in this document to support our conversation. So wherever we are along that spectrum is completely fine. Tucker, you mentioned that you may have done help Julie, and I did the same, so we can kind of maybe partner that one, which is great. What I thought we would do is, not knowing who was able to do some of this reading outside of our time today, give us a little bit of time to either read and have some responses or reflect on what you wrote. But I need to gauge from all of you how much time you might need. Would 2 or 3 minutes be enough? Would 5 minutes be enough? Does 10 minutes feel better?
I mean, I've read it, so like I'm good whenever. But
You're
like
good whenever?
I think it's a lot. So
Okay.
I highly recommend people take a look if they haven't had a chance yet.
Yeah, I mean, I was a little disappointed because I didn't check my email till today. to
I'm
see
so
that
sorry.
We were assigned something for today.
My apologies.
So I've skimmed through it. So a few minutes would be good.
I think that would be great for everyone. Mark, how are you feeling? Would 5-7 minutes be okay for you?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's do that. I will start with 5 minutes, and then if we need a little bit more, then let me know. I will not re-traumatize you with the alarm, but that was 5 minutes. I don't know if a couple more minutes would be helpful. It's okay. Okay, we'll jump in here and Martin, you have focus area number 1. Would you like to share your thoughts?
Okay. Yep, I'll dive in. And I'm going to go back to fundamentals a lot. The what follows the how and the why. And I'll get to a couple of specifics, but kind of downstream. You asked for my understanding as one person. I think an understanding is only meaningful if you put it in context. So I have a bit of a preamble, and I ask your indulgence on that, is what are we doing with equity and why? What's its purpose? And I'm choosing words later on. You'll see I talk about getting to the constructive center. Equity should be achieving fairness and efficiently developing talent and resources using methods that pass tests of logical reasoning. Kind of sounds academic, but these are intentionally technical words aiming for benefits. Something else that we need to understand is that shifting inherited patterns of equity moves on a time scale of generations, not years. So consistently staying on course is essential. It's not a dive in and dive out. And something else that I actually really only learned recently and thought about it is that progress in equity comes as much from individuals out of pattern being liberated, if I use that word, or breaking out, as advances in the general level of generic groups. So when you see individual successes, that's part of the story. Then if I look at the political and legal background to this, our commitments and targets come from the strategic plan and the policies of the state of Washington. Compared to when that review was done, today we look at an elected federal government that's declared war on equity. And so it's probably wise not to pay attention to external political risk in everything that we go about. The standard diagram today of current United States opinions is actually a U-shape, the histogram. And it's got a hollow in the middle. And the two extremes are high. So if we're going to be successful in achieving fairness and efficiency, it's going to be advantageous to work across and find allies to get into the constructive center. And you'll read a lot of literature today about that being important in areas way beyond equity. I think it's an important consideration, and I mentioned trying to choose my words fairly well. That's important. Searching for mutual benefit outcomes and shared values is one way to reach what I call the solid ground, where improvements can be made, where different people can buy in. Learning is necessary to correct for bias. Actually, this is an ad lib. I was told to go and listen to the Turing lecture just last Friday, and the speaker opened. Turing was the guy who probably almost more than anybody else kind of invented the computer and decoded the Nazi codes, and was highly important for World War II ending the way it did. He actually was gay. He committed suicide because he was persecuted afterwards because of that. That's why that lecture. The person opened with a joke and said, yeah, we all know we've got biased, but oh, I'm not prejudiced. So bias is there. It's kind of inevitable. And I think it's systemic and natural. At the same time, we need to accept it and almost embrace it. Anthropologically, it's linked to self-defense. Historically, mutual benefit and sharing functions most efficiently during peaceful times. And honestly, when you're in conflict times, maybe me first is likely to be more efficient. Something else I want to say is lucky coincidence describes the distribution of advantages and privileges as much as any concept of merit. So I think all those things are important when we look at the details of what's in the equity review and what are the actions. Do I feel the district is doing well? Having a mindset to go beyond the by-the-book application of protocols for selection, identification, and enrollment. These are all words out of this review. To become alert and responsive. You can call it attitude preparation. You want people to be motivated to observe and interpret barriers and to accept the need and become technically capable of reducing barriers and correcting blind spots. I think training and reinforcement of team commitment also fits here. And I see this as being most advanced when I am inside the elementary schools, but there are signs of extension into middle and high school. And interestingly, that's a similar comment to what comes out in the review, that there. So that's the area where I see a lot of work being done, and I'll lead into it. I've got two areas where I talk about needing focus. One is formal follow-up. And up until now, I have consistently said, sorry, that's second one, I write notes. I'm pleased that we're having today's workshop because that's an element of formal follow-up. And we've been lacking in the rigor and discipline of doing formal follow-up at the board level since that review come out. So it's good to start today, and I think it's important. That gets back to my comment that it takes a long time to correct these social structures. And so you can't let up diligence. Data measurement. Up until now, I've consistently said that the dynamics of establishing a well-intentioned culture are what most matter at the start, and that we need to have patience while getting to statistics. Individual snapshots are static, and building a time series takes waiting. But I think I've reached the point where I think it's time to change on that now, and I'm going to spend a bit of time talking about statistics. It is very difficult to obtain reliable statistics when the state data is a couple of years out of date. And also my guess is that when we get statistics, they're going to be more like scatter diagrams, something that's a source of clues than definitive, easy to act on information. Chasing disaggregated data that is not powerful when systems for collection are not streamlined can divert a lot of time and energy chasing low-grade data. But it's no longer reasonable for this step to be delayed. We as a district have to come up with an approach that's feasible and practical and has enough substance to stimulate the kind of review and action that we need and be shared with the board. I don't think we should expect simple and obvious answers. In fact, if they're simplistic, that could be dangerous. I expect we'll see indications that need to be interpreted and extended by creative thinking. Here's an example. The fact that students who progress out of multilingual categories are then recorded in a different cohort is an example of a data interpretation trap because we're not tracking the same cohort. But on the other hand, it's an alternative pathway to seek success, find it, and replicate it because there's another pathway, one at a time, not everybody together. Then I try to go to the OSPI site and get something that showed what the distribution was in a high cap subject. AP chemistry would be a good choice. If I could learn what kind of data was available on that structure, it would be nice. I did not succeed in getting any of it. So I think it is time to start pulling out that disaggregated data, but don't have false confidence about how valuable it is. It's going to have to be creatively interpreted. New and promising areas. I wrote, what is high cap? It's interesting in the equity review, it separates CTE from other programs that are traditionally labeled high cap and mentions the risk of steering students by perceived democratics into certain areas. But we've got a situation that I think has developed quite a bit over the last 5 years. Accelerated pathways, skills for the changing external world of career and personal survival, and traditional concepts of high academics. These are overlapping and complicated streams, and they're in a state of flux, a state of change right now. So something that I think is new and promising, it's great that the district has exciting moves for all students to understand the values and consequences of different kinds of learning opportunities, strengthen their education planning, start earlier, get parents involved. One of our weaknesses is the gap between parents and the school district. and the transfer of responsibilities or failure to transfer responsibilities that occurs nationally, adding input from role models, and becoming equipped to make better choices. I think this structure is for all students, but perhaps this changing structure is a great opportunity to look at how it can be tailored specifically for equity goals. Attention to dark corner, unseen corners. I wanted to find the excellent document from the HiCap team that was offered at a recent family night on this subject, what you can do. And this kind of initiative does promote equity and is really, really important. So I was glad to see that happen, and I'm afraid I lost it. Less importantly, we want to avoid using statistical collection based on something that's called HiCap that maybe isn't the most relevant way of looking at what is good opportunity and important things to adjust to a fairer equity distribution. Community outreach is the other way that is new and promising. Schools need partners in constructive collaboration that navigates political and economic divides. This is where I get into the social environment in which we function. It's really important for us to gather as many allies as we can to show where the benefit goes, that it's constructive, that it's generalized. Local efforts to build and grow community partnerships that we see now are really encouraging, and they do help move the district onto common purposes ground in an environment where national social media is unhelpful. So that's kind of, I said, going back to that, I think if I want to hit the core, we need to follow up specifically as a group in whatever we can at regular intervals. I think we've run out of time for saying statistics are difficult to gather. They're going to be weak, but what is there? And let's see if we can glean clues from that. And then we've got a lot of goodwill, a lot of dynamics, a lot of attitude, a lot of community partnerships that we can work on and get beyond lip service or saying, this is what I do. And I go back 5 years. I listen to things as, oh, this is the rule on discipline. We're doing it. That's not necessarily the problem, because the rule on discipline can be people applying it and only seeing a quarter of the playing field. I've said enough.
Yeah,
Thank you, Martin.
Yeah, that was great, Martin. We have like 50 minutes for 5 things. So I don't know how we want to run the, like, do we want to do speed round, or do we want to, because some of these, like the family partnership was throughout all of them, was like,
Yeah.
how are the school, they want better communication, which I think the district has been doing a better job of, but they also wanted some of the family engagement, teacher engagement with the students. So, do we want to try and take some of the themes that Martin talked about and see how they weave through, or do we want to try and just do everyone say their thing so we get through all of it? It'd be a shame if Mark didn't get to talk.
Well, and great point. I think what we can do now is exactly what you said. Let's have everybody get through their conversations. And I actually have had this conversation with some of our own team members at the school district as well. And so we have slides that we can share on each of these areas as well from the district perspective, which I think is great. But I'll probably be sharing that in our weekly update later this week. So yeah, let's move on to, thank you, Martin. That was fantastic. Let's move on to number 2, which was Julie's. Let's go back. Okay. Yeah. So, Tucker, do you want to start with a share of what your findings were, and then I can share anything that I've found that you didn't mention?
Yeah. And I was not nearly as thorough as Martin was, so it'll probably go faster. I think that some of the things that stuck out to me on this were, where are my questions? What do we do well? So one of the things that students, families wanted was challenging real world relevant instruction. And so in the previous topic, they talked about how a lot of students who either fall into Hispanic or special ed or other groups are more likely to take CTE classes, and that is conceived as a bad thing. Like, and I really feel like Jake Buell's done a tremendous job of seeing what the opportunities are for, you know, like living wage jobs and then providing, you know, access to those through school. So you know, I think the challenging real world relevant instruction, some of the things that the district has been doing is to provide, to do a better job of that. And I think that's happening a lot in the CTE department. So I kind of wanted to highlight that. One of the other things that it talked about, instructional practices and policies is, we are losing community engagement, families, students with the schools in the district at that high school level. The elementary and middle schools are very engaged, losing them at the high school. And again, coming back to like the importance of the community partnership as well as the family partnership, and how do you make sure that you're actually engaging those people that are just as much a part of the process as the school district itself. I think that one of the things we talked about was the access to bilingual community, like district outreach. And I think that is something I'm kind of going all the three of the things all at once. But like, I think that was a focus area that certainly during the Columbia closure process, we saw a lot of people feeling like they didn't have a voice. And we did, you know, we got better, but we did not do nearly as good a job as I think we needed to have families who are not coming at this with English as their first language, not feeling engaged, not feeling like they have a voice. And you know, that would be something to be an opportunity. So I kind of, that's my 4 minutes. So I'll turn it over to you.
Excellent, Tucker. Thank you. Yeah, I just had a couple other highlights. On the do well part, this section outlines that there is a high level of trust. There are high levels of respect and belonging. And it talks about teachers of color as well as elementary teachers have high levels of efficacy and confidence with inclusive cultural practices. That leaves out a lot of folks that don't, though, as well. So that's an area of focus. For new and promising, as I was reading through this, I just had to bring myself to Parent Square and how much better our communication is with that programming and how it's being used. Also, some of our cultural responsive practices and learnings with our essential strategies. And then a focus this year, which we haven't highlighted a ton in our school board meetings, but you'll see through the school improvement plans and also the district improvement plan, is a focus on attendance and family engagement, which I'm excited about. So new and promising things there. To focus on, as you mentioned, Tucker, personal connection and communication. And then let's see if I can read my own common language for cultural responsiveness and social emotional learning. That was something that our teachers were asking for in that process. But yeah, other than that, it was pretty well covered. So thank you. And Maria, focus area 3 curriculum. And again, my apologies for poor communication in your homework assignment.
It's probably not a bad thing that I had less time to focus on it. So I want to, it's just, I appreciate the idea of picking this audit up from when we last talked about it. This is something that you inherited from Superintendent Gordon. I appreciate the fact that it was done. However, I think we've done a disservice of kind of sitting on it, for lack of better words, for the last 3 years, which brings me to my next point, that this audit is over 3 years old. It provides a baseline, but it doesn't give us a full picture of where we're at now. A lot has happened in the last 3 years. So where are we now? And how do we move forward? Because I think we're dealing with outdated information, and our world is significantly different than it was 3 years ago. With that being said, all of this is, it's really raw to talk about, just because, again, the last couple of months several months have been really challenging. And the timing is just, I guess for me, if we had kept this in conversation, the timing wouldn't seem so weird because there's a lot going on that is impacting our marginalized communities, which was the focus of this audit. So even with baseline data, if we were to do this again this year, next year, I feel like we're going to get something significantly different. But with that being said, things that are going well, I think our district does a really good job at the K-5, 6, 8 level of providing curriculum that reflects to some degree my experience with my own child. COVID did a number of things, but it also allowed me personally to see what curriculum was taking, what was happening in the school day, right? I got a full immersion of Wonders, and are we still using Wonders? Okay. I know we moved away from Maravillas at Lewis and Clark, correct? Is that right? Okay. But I using Wonders, seeing how that was the book itself. I was really surprised to see how inclusive that curriculum was. At the middle school level, there's book selections through ELA that are representative of our demographics: students with disabilities, students of color, different socioeconomics. And I use the example that we have here in the full findings of the book Tangerine. But that's not quite the same at the high school level. And I'm going to go a little bit on that, on what areas we can focus on more. I think we're like, even this year, I heard the comments like they're still teaching Romeo and Juliet. And so the research that was done here, and I think based on that comment, I'm assuming that not much has changed. And I think it's a little bit more challenging because at that level, the teacher is creating the syllabi. The teacher is choosing their literature books, not so much as a unified system like in K-12 where you have a curriculum for ELA or K-8 curriculum. So I think it's still it's predominantly white main characters, male characters. I don't think our female characters are also represented as main characters. I'm hopeful. What's new and promising, I'm hopeful. One of the things that OSPI, and I'm a little bit biased on this because we worked on it this summer, but OSPI offers the Indian Education Summer Institute. And I think it's a bill that teachers are required to take this course. Do you know much about it, Corey? Okay. And so the fact that the state is requiring educators to know how to teach history with a lens of a non-white male, just for lack of better words. So this summer there was actually, I think the Muckleshoot and the Colville both had their summer institutes to get educators to sign up so that to support them in teaching history the way it was. So although it's not at a local level, I'm hopeful that more resources are coming from the state level that are representative of our communities. I think what's challenging is the accountability implementation. Again, it seems to work well at the K-8 level, the high school level, not so much. Also guilty of this because I've been on the policy committee forever. But we go through our policy reviews, and because this is not at the forefront as we review our policies, I think we forget that we need to make sure that we are viewing them from an equitable lens. And I'm going to use the policy we just approved, which was the curriculum policy, which was one of the areas to highlight. We're really not changing anything. And we need to, I mean, we need to have something like this at the core of every decision and everything we do. And I think just because it hasn't been at the forefront uh, of, I mean, I think we're all guilty of it. It's just not there. It doesn't trigger anything. Even for myself as a person of color, I feel like I've moved away from that. That's all I got.
Thank you very much, Maria. Tucker, you want to talk us through discipline?
Rather not. This, I think this was, I would say, both eye-opening and something I don't feel like I know, and it made me want to learn a lot because I don't know anything. But when one of the highlights is students of color were excluded from the classroom for a higher number of days compared to peers cited for the same incident types, is like, tell me more. Like I think some of this data is one, as to speak to Maria's point, like, this is from 21, 22, and the OSPI data that's currently on the website is 23, 24. So, I would really love to see, and to Martin's point, we can't just always say like, well, we need more data and then we can just make a decision, right? This is going to have to be, we're gonna have to do our best with what we have. But, this seems like the kind of thing, as we talk about, our focus this year is how do we reduce absenteeism? How are we getting kids in the classroom? Because you can't learn if you're not there. So if we're taking certain members of our student body and saying they're going to be disproportionately removed from the classroom, that seems incredibly problematic. So, I was reading most of this. It was not a lot of like, so what are we doing well? It was a lot of like, ooh, that is something we really need to work on. And I think coming back to what I said for number two, and what my other colleagues have said, is like, how are we engaging parents, because they're part of this process, and I, having been in the PTA now for 7 years, how do parents also reach back? Like this can't just be what can the district do to communicate better. I understand that is absolutely on us to start this conversation, but we need to engage, and I think that's to the other thing, how are we engaging in multiple languages? Because we really need that partnership, and we really need students to feel, as we said, as it said in multiple places, elementary age kids feel engaged, middle school feel engaged, and high school disappear. And, maybe that's running start. Maybe that's kids are just finding more independence naturally, or maybe that's when we kind of think that they're adult enough to do their own thing. But really, I think that's when they're more vulnerable. And so, Martin said, was talking about high cap. And I remember there were kids who were in high cap that were in all the high caps. So, how are we selecting kids because if you say you're special in one thing, like that can be a huge just change in how you see yourself. So if you have a kid who's in all three high caps at the elementary level, you have to exclude someone. Like, I can't believe that if that classroom is 24 kids, that there's only 24 kids that are going to be in all three of those, right? That should be 48, 60, 72, or, some semblance of that, right? But like, I think that how we're communicating, and not just Parent Square, right? Although I think that has been, I think the district has stepped up in terms of how you're trying to communicate, certainly based on the number of texts I get in a day. But there's not just how we're saying it directly, but also like, hey, how come this kid got 2 days suspension for that thing and someone else got 3 days? Like, what are you telling the kids based on that? So I think a lot of this was, I don't think that based on this, and again, I like to dig in more, Hispanic, Latino, Latina, Latinx students don't feel supported by the adults in their schools, right? And like, that is 56% of our school district. So how are we, using not just as a lens, but also like really doing the hard work of understanding how we're going to change that? Because it's not just we should we should look at that and keep that in mind. Like, it's also like, that's not okay. So yeah, it was enlightening, I guess. And then it got into some of the like some of the weeds of exactly what we're doing and how we're doing it. But do you know, and Amber, I might put you on the spot. Does exclusionary discipline mean like even removing someone from a classroom? Like if you're having a behavior issue and then you get removed out, is that exclusion or is it like just suspension?
It was. We've had two different iterations of discipline law since this came out. And so the middle piece, the one that we just left, it was considered exclusionary practices and it had to be documented. The newest version, if you have a conference with a student in the hallway, it does not actually fall into that category. It gives the latest version of discipline, which we're updating our policy right now. So the policy committee will probably get that in October. And so what it does is the latest iteration of the policy has what I would say are more realistic expectations of how to hold students accountable. And so that's the interesting thing about, to Maria's point, that this information is 3 years old. It was two policies ago. So I think that we went a little bit more extreme, Tucker,
Yep.
and then we've kind of landed in a space that honors the teacher and their needs in the classroom, but also supports student needs and what we actually are calling exclusions. So it's been a little bit of an evolution, which has been interesting to go through, but I think we've landed in the right spot.
Yeah, and I believe that this is evolved from 21, 22, but yeah, it just when you look at these findings, it should be something that you're like, we should really focus on this.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
I think overall, I don't want to like burn up all our time, but like I think overall it was enlightening and also something that I feel like we really need to look at, and because it doesn't look good.
Yeah. And one of the things that I'll ask you all to take a look at is kind of what our thoughts are from the district perspective around discipline. So I think you'll see some items there that under the new and promising section it'll help a little bit. We have not solved all of the problems with it, and we do need to be more intentional in that work. So I appreciate that. Yeah, thanks, Tucker. Mark, you're up.
Maybe I'll be the shortest of everyone, mostly because mine is a little less student related. One of something I thought was interesting in the reading of the full document that I just feel is impactful enough to share. It says that students of color having teachers who share their race or ethnicity can improve test scores and reduce likelihood of disciplinary issues. And then also for white students, exposure to multiple perspectives in diverse learning communities improves problem solving, critical thinking, creativity, social and emotional skills, and civic engagement. I thought it was just impactful as we think about something that can be not clear always, like hiring, where it's not just something that you spit into a machine and it gives you an answer on what's the best fit. So based on the documentation here, what was working well within the hiring and recruitment policies was that we had our affirmative action plan includes steps to correct the underutilized areas, and that the labor union agreement with WA included our non-disclosure clause, which I thought were great. New and promising, I didn't have a lot there other than I think we do live in a diverse community. And so I hope that that is helping drive our candidate pools. And then again, based on what was in here, areas to focus on, it would appear that revised strategies are possibly needed for attracting and retaining a diverse workforce, including the hiring practice and including administrators in those district level strategies, and that our current recruitment policy did not contain any mentions of diversity, equity, or inclusion.
Excellent, Mark. Thank you. First of all, I want to thank you all for taking the time to revisit the equity audit and compose some thinking around that. And obviously, there are lots of different ways that we can look at this information. I do like the perspective that you all brought on the different situations that we talked about in the 5 areas. Are there any other, I just want to open it up to any other thoughts or comments, maybe not just based on your particular section or anything else that you would like to share before I cruise through some of the examples that I want to share with you as well, knowing that I'll have some time to follow up in our weekly update. But I don't know if anybody else had any thoughts to share.
I think the district is doing a good job in regards to the services that our buildings are providing. You know, we have been, I think for the most part, in most buildings, super intentional, making sure we have somebody at the front who is there to greet them, to welcome them into the building that they could connect with. So, you know, I think about where we were 5 years ago to where we're at now. Obviously, you know, our language, our communication piece has been very, very good. You know, making sure we are pushing out all information in Spanish and English. So that, I mean, that's fabulous. There's so much work to do, and that's the fact that we've been doing this for so long now. It's promising. But I think, you know, revisiting some of these recommendations is definitely the way to go.
Agreed. Thank you. Any other thoughts? Okay. All right. Well, let's jump into some of the. I'll try to highlight a point or two in each of these areas. And then I'll describe the team because I invited Amber to be here. Thanks, Amber, for coming. We have a Delivering on the Promise team. We have, since the strategic plan, there has been a focus on that promise statement with our leadership team. And there's been different activities and different conversations that we've had at the district level in our leadership teams throughout that. But this year, I wanted to create more of a broader conversation. We had a team, we didn't have a team, and now we have a team again. So Amber is on that team along with Brittany, Alfonso, and Josh from Orchard as well. So we have a small but nimble team, and the goal is to continue our work around the promise statement to build the foundation of diversity, equity, inclusion from which each student emerges future ready. And there are a few different sections of that work that we're focusing on as a team. One of that is to continue our own individual and leadership growth in diversity, equity, and inclusion, but also to plan strategic collaboration time. And then how do we view DEI in the work that we do on a daily basis? And then 4, how do we build the capacity for our own leaders to lead the work? And so I had Amber come to join us because she was part of the conversation where I posed we read the findings document, and I posed these exact same questions to that team as well. So, and I will just share that in that room, it gives you an idea of which of the 5 topics might have more information than others. So for us, curriculum and the hiring practices didn't have quite as much because of who was in the room. So I consulted Kelly, and she gave me some of the items that she's been working on the last 3 years as well. So that's what you'll see in this, the information here. So I'll just kind of jump into it really quick. So focus area number 1, access to learning opportunities. You'll also notice that this is more robust than what's just in the document. Okay. And that's, I think that's okay, because that drove some of our conversation. But what are we doing well? We have things like increasing CTE offerings. And Martin, as you discussed, the accelerated pathways, science field trip opportunities. And then we have what's new and promising. And we had a conversation, Tucker, about the same thing that you kind of talked about, how CTE and our Latino population is viewed. And we saw it as a positive that we have strong numbers in our CTE program because we do feel like those classes are not just throwaway classes, and they are quite rigorous, and they are preparing our students for not only a future outside of their secondary education, but a future that might have opportunities here locally as we're growing things. So we took that as a positive. Then we had the accelerated pathways there, and then working on rigor. What are the grade level standards, and how are we working on that kind of school district wide? And then what do we need to work on? Latino students in higher level math classes and high cap. Also, just looking at disproportionality in general is an area that we can grow at the district level, which will then extrapolate down to the building level. And I have not, I'll just admit and be vulnerable here. I've never been really good at navigating the Tableau system that is in the school district. It's almost been a little bit of an area where it seems overwhelming for me to learn. So I invited former Superintendent Bill Eagle back last week, or it was 2 weeks ago now, but we sat down and he has a better knowledge and understanding of Tableau. And we worked on it during the 22-23 school year when he was here. And so we dove into it a little bit, but right now the data that is available it's lagging, and it's not the information that we needed to look at from an attendance perspective and family engagement perspective, but that will populate soon. So we're going to look back on that. But overall, disproportionalities in coursework and in discipline is an area of growth for the district. Special education is also, I won't say it's a growth area for the district because OSPI actually gives it to us. They're just like, here it is. And it's great. It's what we do with that information that I think is the grow area there. So that's how are we doing on time? Okay, moving and grooving. Focus area number 2, instructional practices. I think having Amber on the team helped grow this area. We have a lot of things there with our guaranteed and viable curriculum, the Wenatchee School District's essential strategies, the 4 domains of language and access. And then from the report, our families did report high levels of trust, respect, and belonging. What's new and promising? Leveraging the implementation progression and implementation science cycle. As you can see from our diagram here, the dream is that when the Wenatchee School District's tight expectations are fully implemented or at that habit phase. Also, what we feel is new and promising is family engagement and attendance on every single school building's school improvement plan, which you'll see in October and November. We're excited about that. You also may have seen that in the LCAP or the school district's improvement plan that I put in the last couple of weeklies. We're also studying fair and equitable grading practices. And then our migrant team helping the entire school population understand our students, creating more staff awareness from our migrant and Latino families. What do we need to work on? Continue to increase rigor, guaranteed and viable units at the 912 arena, implementation of that guaranteed and viable curriculum, as well as the Wenatchee School District essential strategies every day in every classroom. Also, we know that educators would benefit from district level support in skills and common language around culturally responsive teaching. And there's a reference to Zaretta Hammond's work there and strengthening our family engagement and attendance practices. Curriculum, this one was a little bit shorter. We got it all on one page. What do we do well? And as we were reading the documentation, and as we presented, there are some things that we do well. We know that we're moving some policies forward that are more inclusive, even though using that equity lens as we're looking at those policies would be valuable, and having that as a side-by-side or a crosswalk would be important. We also know that and I say an awareness. Sometimes we think of a learning doing gap. We know what the gap is, but we need to learn how to address it. We are aware of the work in the new policy. It will be nice this year to move beyond English language arts and math and focus on social studies and go through a new adoption policy cycle to see how we can have that equity lens and our policies together at the same time. New and promising work is culturally responsive teaching practices and district-wide professional development around Zaretta Hammond's work there. Continuing the work with the central strategies, and as I mentioned, the social studies curriculum. What do we need to work on? And as came out of that, the audit there, partnering with more local tribes, working with OSPI's Since Time Immemorial work. I'm excited. I have some professional learning coming up where I'll be at Sleeping Lady learning from indigenous tribes and populations in, I think it's in November, early November. So I'm excited about that as well. Focus area 4, discipline. What do we do well? And again, this is on the latest iteration of discipline law. I think that we holistically, as a leadership team, have a deeper understanding of discipline law in general and what those changes mean for our system. So I am excited about that. We are working on updating our policy and procedures. We have the discipline guidelines are in the hands of our leaders. They're actively using those new guidelines, and we're working on the policy to catch up with that. We've had multiple trainings in team time. In fact, we brought in for our admin advance this year, we brought in some legal consultants that shared with us every change that had happened and how that impacts buildings and schools before the school year started. We also had them spend an hour with our elementary staff as well. So this is good. This is good. What's new and promising? Perceptual data collecting in frequent formative manner. How do we get the data in front of our staff so that they can understand where the disproportionalities are and the reality of the work that's happening? Because if they're not seeing it and it's not something that's part of their daily work, then we're not addressing those concerns. And so that is something that our team has actually talked about too, is not only how do we get the attendance information in front of our leaders so that they can look at it and work with it, but also how do we get the discipline there as well? So we're working on systems there. And then what do we need to do? We need to break out of building-based silos. So continuing to collaborate around discipline and what does the consistency look like in our practices so that impacts students, especially when we think of disproportionalities and attendance. And PBIS. Ever since the pandemic, we have had what I refer to as a perpetual PBIS reboot. And I've asked our teams to look at what would PBIS system restructuring look like for the Wenatchee School District, and how can we, even if we need to spend some dollars and some time, look at that, because it's been a long time since we've had someone from the outside kind of take a look at our positive behavioral interventions and support structures for our students. And so we're just scratching the surface of what that might look like later this year or next year. So, okay. And then when we get to hiring and recruitment, so here are some of the things. What do we do well? And these are, I asked Kelly to put some of these things together for me. So the job advertisement growth, and then the CBA language for our associations. The language does not limit our posting ability other than to say that it will be open for a minimum of 5 days, but making sure that we leave postings open for longer. Working to create a culture of growing our own. And that has been something that I've watched Kelly and Katie embrace, which has been really cool to see that in my 4.5 years here at the district office, but creating better and easy avenues for student teachers into our organizations, breaking down those barriers, having a deeper understanding of local university programs to assist our staff. Kelly, I am aware of the Eastern Washington program just because I'm CC'd on everything. Are there other universities that we're collaborating with closely? Okay. Okay. Yeah, and it's been a heavy focus. Yeah, thank you. And they consistently produce great teachers as well through that program. So that's fantastic. Not that our other universities don't, but the partnership has been strong there. I'm going to pop to a couple other things. What's new and promising? We just switched to Red Rover for our employee management system. And so when you go to look at jobs for the Wenatchee School District, you'll see a different interface. And we're hoping that that right there is a barrier reduction because we know it was a barrier in the past. Just the ease, the lack of navigation ability for most folks. It just wasn't intuitive in a lot of ways. Yeah. You had to be on a computer before. Okay. Well, that's a barrier reduction right there. I appreciate that, Kelly. And then what do we need to continue working on is continuing to align our demographics of educators and staff to our student population. One of the things that we talk about a lot and is that we are getting better. We were getting better, but we have reduced a lot of our newer teachers through budget reduction systems and processes, unfortunately. Most of them we've been able to continue to keep in the district and in the area in some capacity, but we are looking at that as a growth endeavor. Also, continuing to partner with Wenatchee Valley College for programming, being the two largest educational institutions in our area, it's just seems like a natural. And then continuing to create a system-wide hiring template. So Kelly, thanks for putting that together for our board to see as we move forward. As we're getting closer to the 2:30 mark, thank you. You got to see a little bit of this information and my highlights through the conversation. I'll share this again in the weekly so that you have all of it at your fingertips. And we have work to do. There's no doubt about it. And I think that keeping our eyes on the prize of the promise is going to be the work that's going to lead us forward. And so I just appreciate your time here. And feel free to reach out on what your thoughts are as you process today and the information on what else you'd like to see in this area. And Tucker, you and I can continue to work on that too. Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone.
All right. Well, being adjourned. Thanks for
Okay.
coming, everyone.
Nice job. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Liz. Amber, thanks for being here. I appreciate that. Yes. I saw you taking some copious notes, so we'll be able to bring that back to our team. Kelly, thanks for joining us today. Appreciate it.